Hello and welcome. You are in our virtual classroom. I am Teacher Anne, and I will be your teacher in English 9. Before we start our lesson, I want you to remember two things. First is to listen very carefully, and second is to answer all the questions as we go along our lesson. Are you ready? All right, let's start. Our lesson for today comes from the Module 4 of your third quarter lessons. And the topic is identifying types and features of a play synopsis. So here are the objectives of our lesson. First is to explain play synopsis. The second is for you to understand the gist of the classic Romeo and Juliet. And finally is to analyze sample play synopsis. Are you ready? All right, let's begin. So to start off our lesson, I want you to guess the following movies as I post a picture of following movie posters. Are you ready? All right, so you have 5 seconds to look at this picture. And now I'll give you another 5 seconds to write down your answer in a piece of paper. All right, let's see if your answer is correct. It is Harry Potter. This one is a classic children's book that has been made into a motion picture or a movie. Here's another picture. Now you have 5 seconds to write it down. Okay, so if your answer is Magnifico, then you are correct. This is a classic Filipino movie about a young boy who wants to help his poor family. Now here's another photograph. And you have another 5 seconds to write down your guess. All right, so if your answer is Star Wars, then that is correct. This one is about people and creatures fighting in the galaxy. And finally, we have one last picture. And I'll give you another 5 seconds to write down your guess. Okay, this one is called Fangirl. This one is a contemporary Filipino movie about a young woman who falls in love with an actor and becomes obsessed with him. Did you enjoy our little game? All right. So if you know those movies or if you are interested about them, you have an idea what you like to watch. That's why synopsis is very important. Before we watch a movie or read a book or watch a play at the theater, we would like to know what the story is about first, and that's where synopsis comes in. For example, I have this book right here, but I'm not quite sure if I would like to read it because there are so many other books to choose from. So I can read a synopsis written at the back of the book to see what it is all about. Right? So that's why synopsis is very important. We can simply read the synopsis of a certain movie or a story that we think we might like and then decide for ourselves if we like it or not, or if it's something that resembles the things that we like. Now, before we can write our own synopsis, we need to understand what a synopsis is all about. All right, so let's go ahead and find out. So what is a synopsis? Synopses are useful summaries that are written for the benefit of a potential reader or audience. It gives an overview and a sneak peek at the work, which lets you choose things that are interesting or useful to you personally or professionally. Take note of the word sneak peek. because synopsis gives you a peek at what the story is about. Another meaning of synopsis is that they are extremely valuable and necessary pieces of writing for authors, filmmakers, TV producers, academic writers, and many others. In order for students like you to take full advantage of these various purposes of writing, you must learn how to create a synopsis. So let's find out what are the guidelines that we could use in writing a synopsis. So here are the guidelines in writing a good plot summary, or what we call a synopsis. The first is the time and place should be indicated at the beginning of the synopsis. Take note of the time and place, which is the setting of the story. This is a very important piece of information in writing a synopsis. The second one is a brief description of the main characters. Take note of description of only the main characters or the most important characters in the story. They should be given as they appear in the story or in order. Now, the third guideline is that the synopsis should begin at the opening of the story and told in the same order as the play and end at the play's conclusion. That means we should follow the plot, or what happens first, next, and last. The fourth guideline is for the dramatic scenes that propel the story forward, including climatic scenes, should be described within the synopsis. Take note of the words dramatic scenes as well as climatic scenes of the story. Now for the fifth one, the synopsis must be no longer than 250 words. Again, no longer than 250 words. Well, you don't have to count the words all the time, but you must make sure that the synopsis is not too long as to deviate from its very purpose. Remember, we are trying to write a summary that is easy to understand for students and people like you. That way, we would be able to learn about the story without spending much time to it. And for the next guideline, the story must be told in the present tense and in the third person. So again, present and not past or future tense. And also, we need to use the third person point of view when writing or telling a story. That means there must be some narrator telling how the story progresses and not one of the characters in the story. And for the last guideline, when telling the story, the dialogue should not be included. So again, there must be no dialogue or conversations in the story. Okay, so let's try to review the following guidelines again. So first is to always have a setting. Next is to write the description of the most important characters in the story. Third is to write the plot in order. Fourth is to include dramatic scenes or climatic scenes. Fifth is your synopsis must be short or, as much as possible, no longer than 250 words long. Sixth is that the story must be told in present tense and third person. And for number 7, there must be no dialogue or conversation included in your synopsis. Alright, so I want you to read them again on your own. Try to internalize the guidelines because we will be using them in the next story, and I will ask you to write your own synopsis. Okay, are you done? So let's continue. Alright, so for your next activity, you will need to write your own synopsis of the story that I will be reading. So this story is a very popular classic, and we're going to learn about its summary, all right, of each act in the story. Okay, so again, each act in the story will have its own summary, but then you need to write your own synopsis on the story as a whole. Are you ready? Okay, let's start. The story we're going to read for today is William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, a classic romance play that is written as a masterpiece and is regarded as one of the best romance in the world. Now, before we begin, last time you were able to learn the different genres of a play. So, using the game 4 Picks, 1 Word, I want you to guess what genre Romeo and Juliet has by looking at the following pictures and clues right down below. Alright, so I'll give you another clue. Alright, now I want you to write down your guess on your piece of paper. So if your guess is tragedy, then that is correct. So a tragedy is a kind of story that ends in sadness or despair. So we are to expect that this story doesn't have any happy ending, but we will learn lots of things through this lesson. Okay, so before we continue with the actual story, we need to learn more about the author first. And as I've mentioned, the author is the most famous English writer, William Shakespeare. Now, who is William Shakespeare exactly? He is an English poet, playwright, and actor. And he was born on the 26th of April, 1564 in Stratford-upon-Avon. His father was a successful local businessman, and his mother was the daughter of a landowner. Shakespeare is widely regarded as the greatest writer in the world of English language and the world's preeminent dramatist. He is often called England's national poet and nicknamed the Bard of Avon. Alright, so now that we know more about the writer of this wonderful masterpiece, let us learn more about the story as I read the summary of each act in the story. Alright, are you ready? The story of Romeo and Juliet. Act 1. Romeo and Juliet begins as the chorus introduces two feuding families of Verona, the Capulets and the Montagues. On a hot summer's day, the young men of each faction fight until the Prince of Verona intercedes and threatens to banish them. Soon after, the head of the Capulet family plans a feast. His goal is to introduce his daughter Juliet to a count named Paris, who seeks to marry her. Montague's son Romeo and his friends Benvolio and Mercutio hear of the party and resolve to go in disguise. Romeo hopes to see his beloved Rosaline at the party. Instead, while there, he meets Juliet and falls instantly in love with her. Juliet's cousin Tybalt recognizes the Montague boys and forces them to leave just as Romeo and Juliet discover one another. End of Act 1. Act 2. Romeo lingers near the Capulet house to talk with Juliet when she appears in her window. The pair declares their love for one another and intends to marry the next day. With the help of Juliet's nurse, the lovers arrange to marry when Juliet goes for confession at the cell of Friar Lawrence. There, they are secretly married. End of Act 2. Act 3. Following the secret marriage, Juliet's cousin Tybalt sends a challenge to Romeo. Romeo refuses to fight, which angers his friend Mercutio, who then fights with Tybalt. Mercutio is accidentally killed as Romeo intervenes to stop the fight. In anger, Romeo pursues Tybalt, kills him, and is banished by the prince. Juliet is anxious when Romeo is late to meet her and learns of the brawl, Tybalt's death, and Romeo's banishment. Friar Lawrence arranges for Romeo to spend the night with Juliet before he leaves for Mantua. Meanwhile, the Capulet family grieves for Tybalt, so Lord Capulet moves Juliet's marriage to Paris to the next day. Juliet's parents are angry when Juliet doesn't want to marry Paris, but they don't know about her secret marriage to Romeo. Friar Lawrence helps Juliet by providing a sleeping draught that will make her seem dead. End of Act 3. Act 4. When the wedding party arrives to greet Juliet the next day, they believe she is dead. The friar sends a messenger to warn Romeo of Juliet's plan and bids him to come to the Capulet family monument to rescue his sleeping wife. End of Act 4. Act 5. The vital message to Romeo doesn't arrive in time because the plague is in town, so the messenger cannot leave Verona. Hearing from his servant that Juliet is dead, Romeo buys poison from an apothecary in Mantua. He returns to Verona and goes to the tomb, where he surprises and kills the mourning Paris. Romeo takes his poison and dies, while Juliet awakens from her drugged coma. She learns what has happened from Friar Lawrence, but she refuses to leave the tomb and stabs herself. The friar returns with the prince, the Capulets, and Romeo's lately widowed father. The deaths of their children led the families to make peace, and they promise to erect a monument in Romeo and Juliet's memory. The end.
Did you enjoy the story? Well, that's great if you did. Alright, to see if you remember what happened, we're going to take a quick test to see if you still remember the order of events in the story. You have 3 minutes to do this. Alright, if you're done, you may now check your answers. Here is the correct sequence of events in the story. So the beginning is when Romeo goes to the feast to see Rosaline. Then Romeo and Juliet meet. Juliet's father threatens to disown her if she does not marry Paris. Then Romeo and Juliet are married. Next is when Romeo kills Tybalt. Then Romeo is banished from Verona, and Juliet fakes her death. Romeo then drinks poison, and Juliet stabs herself. Well done! So if you got all the events correctly, then good job. But if not, you may refer to the correct sequence or order for you to remember. Alright. Okay, so if you have remembered the correct sequence of the story, we may now write your own synopsis. Okay, so remember the directions are to write a synopsis of Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare and to simply follow the guidelines in writing a good plot summary. Alright, so remember the guidelines in writing a good plot summary. Those are what you're going to use to create your own synopsis, and you may write your answers in a one whole sheet of paper. You have 3 minutes to do this. You may pause this video. Alright, so now let's check your answers. Okay, so your summary may be in different form, but I just want you to see what a synopsis should look like. So let's see. An age-old vendetta between two powerful families erupts into bloodshed. A group of masked Montagues risk further conflict by gate-crashing a Capulet party. A young, lovesick Romeo Montague falls instantly in love with Juliet Capulet, who is due to marry her father's choice, the County Paris. With the help of Juliet's nurse, the women arrange for the couple to marry the next day. But Romeo's attempt to halt a street fight leads to the death of Juliet's own cousin, Tybalt, for which Romeo is banished. In a desperate attempt to be reunited with Romeo, Juliet follows the prior's plot and fakes her own death. The message fails to reach Romeo, and believing Juliet dead, he takes his life in her tomb. Juliet wakes to find Romeo's corpse beside her and kills herself. The grieving family agrees to end their feud. Alright, and that is what a simple summary or synopsis looks like. As you can see, you can use your own words in writing a much shorter sentences in order to abide by the guidelines of writing a synopsis. Alright, so now let's take another review. So again, let's see if everything was done in accordance with the guidelines of writing a good plot summary. So remember that the first step is to write the setting of the story or the time and place where the story happened. There must be a character description, all right, in the story. Okay, and then there must be a sequence of events or the plot in order. Next is that dramatic scenes and climatic scenes must be included in the story. And then 250 words or less, as much as possible, must be used in writing your synopsis. Now, present tense and in third person must be used when writing the synopsis. And finally, there must be no dialogue in the story. Alright, so those are the good or the guidelines to writing a good plot summary. Now for your assignment, I would like you to write a synopsis of a movie or TV series that you have currently watched. Remember to follow the guidelines in writing a good plot summary. That will be all for today. Thank you so much. If you have any question about our lesson, you may send me a personal message through my email or through my Facebook Messenger. And I will be expecting your outputs as well as your homeworks or assignments next Tuesday. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time. Here are my references if you would like to have a further learning about this topic. That's all for today. Thank you and goodbye.